What's going on, team? Proof here, and today I'm coming at you with one of the two cards that we got from Premium Collection. That there was a big info dump last week, and when I saw it, I had my own personal impressions about it, and then I really started testing it and starting to get a really good feel for it. So let's go ahead and hop into it. And the card that we got for spikes on our stride is Shootdown Emperor Violence Ace. And I did expect them to bring back Miracle Ace because it was one of the more iconic strides that we had during the G era. It was the defining card in the charge deck back in the day. So I will have a nice little connection to it, and I really like the card, so I'm happy to see it come back in a different form. And what it does is auto once per turn, counter blast, turn a card face up in your G zone, draw the same number of cards as the face up cards in your G zone, and until end of turn, this unit gets, as a red text, Vanguard, Act, Soul Blast 1, and one of your units gets plus 10,000 power until the end of turn. And then also in addition to that, it says when your opponent's Guardians becomes 2 or more, cost Counterblast 1, put a rear guard into your soul, call a card from your hand to counterblast to your rear guard circle. So let's go ahead and break it down a little bit. And my first impression of the card was that it was kind of but that's because I saw it next to the info dump, which had all the other various strides that came out, and it had like plus additional drive, guard restrict, those type of things. So I was kind of bummed that Spikes didn't get a very overtly impressive looking card that kind of just like jumped out at you, and I was kind of bummed that it didn't make like a really powerful first stride option, even though we already have Agrius for our purposes there. I was kind of looking forward to seeing another big first stride option because we've already seen some of the other cards that came out prior to that were really good first stride options. But then I started really starting to look into it and starting getting down into it, and for my testing, I kind of started to be able to see some of the good characteristics and some of the bad things that I kind of wished was lacking, or that I kind of noticed were lacking. So for the good, it's one of the very few / only raw draw options in Spikes. Like other cards like Fierce Leader Zachary, he needs to hit and then he needs to put himself back to the deck for you to draw a card. Machine Gun Gloria needs to put the card that she boosted back to the deck and draw. This card here is just, as long as you have a lot of G units face up, you can just raw draw cards until you fulfill the requirement, and it's the biggest burst draw option that Spikes has ever had, and that's really exciting to see. And it's a great way to be able to use the soul that you build up. So if you're using stuff like Bracky, Juggernaut, Wonder Boy, Gyro Slinger, Mecha Instructor, cards like that just help put cards into your soul throughout the course of the game, you now have a really good way to reap the benefits of that. Because say you have 7 cards in soul, you can just soul blast 7 and then distribute 70,000, I can't math, 70,000 worth of power amongst your different units. That's really cool, and that kind of helps mitigate that it's not such an impressive first stride, because you can still be able to use it and still make impressive numbers across the board early on. So it's kind of like a nice little give and take there, and it's a great way to be able to draw cards. Say you're going first, you ride to grade 3, try to put pressure on your opponent, but you have a heal in your hand and you G-guard with it, your Violence Ace now becomes Counterblast 1, draw 2, which might be a nice way to be able to recoup some of that card that you use to try to beat your opponent down, to then help refuel. Maybe you draw a couple big pieces that you might need, maybe a Panther or a Juggernaut, and then be able to call those out as well to then distribute the power from the other skill to then be able to beat your opponent down even more. So you be aggressive, and then if you have the means to do so, you can draw and then be able to keep that chain going. That's really nice as well. And it's kind of a nice bridge the gap stride type of way, kind of sort of. Like if you think about it, sometimes we might want to go into Picaro as a mid-game stride because our hand isn't good enough for Agrius. But we want to keep being proactive, and we would go into Picaro as a way to put units on the board while being aggressive. But that's Counterblast 2. Violence Ace here is a similar enough effect and a similar enough payoff, except that you don't need to fill up your board, which might not be good against certain matchups, but now you can just draw the cards, be able to defend yourself better to help bridge the gap until you get to your bigger stride, maybe a follow-up Agrius, maybe Picaro becomes better after that. Of course, Hellheart 8, those type of cards. And it's a nice stride to have if you have a weak Agrius hand. So like if your first stride is looking like, because I know I've been there, I don't know if you have, but I've had plenty of games where my hand is a bunch of triggers and nothing that could be really useful with an Agrius. Now you can go into Violence Ace, just counterblast 1, draw X number of cards. Might, as I mentioned before, you might draw into a necessary attacking unit to then call it out and be a powerful unit to use. And then the counterblast 1 skill, it's a nice little bonus on top of everything. I don't think it's something you really want to base your game plan around from my personal testing, but it is a nice little, oh yeah, like I have this big number that you don't want to guard with or you can't guard with one card, and now you have to use multiple resources. You can use any spare counterblast to then call something else out, be able to attack your opponent for a lot of damage. Because something that I've noticed is that you use one of the Soul Blasts or one or two of the Soul Blasts from Violence Ace to then power up the booster behind your big attacker. Because then if they guard it or guard any of your other attacks, you can put the first unit into the soul, call over the big booster, and now it's a big threat in and of itself. And it goes really well with Force 2, and this kind of goes into my next point, in that one of my big hopes that Bushiroad gave us, because even though I didn't really talk about it much here, I did talk about it in my chat. One of the things I really hoped for was either a standalone stride, that's something that didn't need rear guards to function, and something that would help us against the Link Joker control matchups that we might run into, because historically spikes have been kind of okay. It depends on how fast you can accelerate your G zone to get to Hellheart 8, but usually when we ran into the Link Joker matchups of the world, we were kind of groaning. But Bushiroad, in addition to the Force 2 mechanic that came out, or the Gift 2 option, but us being a Force clan got Force 2, this helps us so much in control matchups, because you can now just put Force 2 on the Vanguard, and then you can just slowly beat your opponent down via Violent Ace's Soul Blast skill, because you can Soul Blast 2, give Vanguard plus 20,000, now your opponent has to deal with 48,000 in a crit, turn over turn over turn, and that helps us a lot against control matchups, while at the same time drawing cards which might accelerate us into Hellheart 8 to be able to finish them off after we got done beating them down over the head. That helped us out a lot, and that's something I wish for, but I didn't see it until my testing, because I was kind of feeling ho-hum about things initially, as I talked about from the outset. If you stride and say you used all your cards that you needed to survive, but you have a big G zone necessary, and you can't go into Hellheart 8 for some reason, you can draw, say, 7 cards, and now you just have a big refill, and that helps you out a lot after you spend a lot of your resources trying to survive, which is something that spikes can do. Or you use a lot of resources early on to try to beat your opponent down. You can use your G zone as a resource to be able to draw those cards back to then help you defend yourself. So that's really nice little bonus on top of everything as well. So those are the good things. Now I'm gonna talk about some of the things that I didn't like as much about Violence Ace, because there's always some good with the bad, there's always some bad with the good. There are instances where it can feel a little bit slow, because at the very worst of Violence Ace, it's counterblast 1, draw 1 card as a first stride, versus a good Agrius sequence, which is 5 attacks, draw a card, and then though that doesn't pair favorably in favor of Violence Ace. So in those instances like that, it can feel kind of like a slow option. It does scale magnificently into the later portions of the game, but early on it can feel like it's taking up G zone space. And I don't like the fact that the card that you call from Violence Ace's Counterblast 1 absorb a rear guard skill doesn't gain power unless you're unless it's put onto a Force 1 circle. It feels like it's kind of there to, I know it's there to help out charge, but it feels kind of ho-hum to me. Like, I wish it kind of did something a little more exciting as opposed to just calling out an extra attacker. And it's not much of a threat unless you commit an extra card as a booster, unless you're playing Charge or something with Frog Raider, you have to then power up said booster to then make the card in front of it much more of a threat, because the card that you call in and of itself might not be that impressive of a number. So I don't like that aspect of it either. And I think it has a fairly high cost in addition. Even though you can fuel it with the first part of the skill, that then you have to pay an additional counter blast and then get the extra attack off. It's kind of meh. So, and there's not like a clear line there that supports the charge stuff. And what I mean by that is that if you take a look at Gluttony Neburos, the Tachi Stride, it syncs up with Equip Gauge, and it also has Engorge, so it kind of like bridges that gap between the G era stuff and the current standard stuff. However, Violence Ace here doesn't have that same line to help you out. Like, sure, if your opponent guards your big charge attacker with 2+ cards, you can then counterblast one and call out another card, which is all well and good. But it would have been nice if, in addition to everything that he has, if you had like a little line in there that said, when you call a card from hand that has the charge ability, it is now charging, or something like that to help kind of tie it together. Because without that, you have to go through extra hoops to be able to facilitate charge when your opponent may have the faculties available to them, such as big G guards, perfect guards, damage buffer there that they can just let the attack hit. And so if the attack isn't threatened enough to be able to want to guard it, then you kind of lose that aspect of Balance Ace that helps the charge side of the deck. So that's kind of ho-hum in and of itself. So all that being said, what's my personal opinion on Violence Ace? I think he's very good. I really like that it can be a decent first stride if all else fails. I love that it continues to scale over the course of the game. I really like that if the game isn't in a game state to where we want to push for game, we can go into Violence Ace with 3 to 4 cards in our G zone because we probably G guarded ahead of it. Burst draw 4+ cards into our hand, and then be able to figure out what we want to do from there. And that's really cool. I like having a burst option to draw in spikes now, because as times have gone on, I've kind of shifted away from being more combo focused on things and wanting to be more tempo oriented with things. And that's why I favor the standard version of the deck with the strides, aka Standard Plus. So I like being able to facilitate that through Violence Ace, and I like that it's generic enough to be able to help out other archetypes as well. So all in all, it's a really solid card. I look forward to playing it some more. I can't wait to have it in my hands, and I do expect to have some replays up to you guys coming up soon. So with that all said, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope I was able to convey my thoughts to you guys clearly and succinctly. And let me know what you guys think about Violence Ace and how's your testing going with it. So that'll do it for me. I hope you enjoyed, and until the next one, peace. Be easy.